Hi ladies and gentlepeople, and welcome to The Forest. So in this video we're going to be looking at the absolute basics of how to design a website, what you'll need essentially. And none of the stuff I'm going to go through costs any money at all. In fact, in the next few videos you'll see exactly how to actually do this, and it is so easy, and your computer already can do the majority of this stuff, and anything extra we need is completely free and it's no issue at all. So, first thing you need to know about making your website is that you will need, most likely, 5 things. The first thing is HTML, then CSS, then JavaScript, then PHP, and then SQL or MySQL. So, what do those 5 things do? Well, let's sit back and imagine a blank screen. Now, this blank screen represents your idea at the moment of your website. It's blank because you don't know how to do any of the stuff. So let's break it down. First thing you want is some content. So let's put some content on there. There we go. Okay. Content looks boring as heck, and I think many websites that look like this at the moment probably won't be very visually appealing. So what we've done with this so far is called HTML. Now HTML is a very powerful thing, but HTML is essentially the content of your website. It's the first thing your browser looks at. Okay, so your browser will look for the HTML and it will present it. Now, if I don't want that text to be black, if I want to change the color of it, I do not do that with HTML. I do that with something called CSS, okay, which stands for Cascading Style Sheets. CSS is the thing that that controls how the website looks. So you can do anything, or you can do a lot of stuff with CSS to do with the presentation of the site. So let's bring it up again. I can change the color of the text. I can then shift all of that text and move it to the right. Okay, all of that is CSS. Now, it does get confusing because you can actually write CSS within HTML, which we'll talk about in a later video, or it can be its own separate part of the HTML, or it can be its complete own document. So CSS is quite integrated into HTML, which a lot of people don't like, and it's considered bad programming mixing up these things, and they should be kept separate all times, or almost all times. So that looks good, and our website looks fantastic. So why have I mentioned the other things? Well, actually, your website will do fine with that depending on what your site is. So for instance, if you're selling your sofa, you could get away with just doing HTML and CSS, and you could import pictures with HTML. So HTML can load pictures, and then CSS can adjust the size of them and the crop and everything else. You would be fine. And you could stop there, and that would be an absolutely okay website, and you could put that up online and it would be absolutely fantastic. The other 3 are to do with things that actually you get to a point of your website and you go, oh, hang on, HTML and CSS don't do this. And the things that they generally don't do is anything to do with interactivity. Now CSS does have some great things for interactivity. For instance, when you hover your mouse over a link, it changes color, and you can do that all within CSS. That's a bit of interactivity. You can also do quite clever stuff with CSS, and CSS works with the next thing I'm going to talk about, and you can fade in transitions using CSS and using this other thing. And the other thing that we're going to move on to is all about interactivity, and that is JavaScript. JavaScript is, I think it was originally suggested as a language to be the interactivity on the internet, and then it just took over and it became the language. For instance, when you start your JavaScript within an HTML file, and yes, JavaScript can also be written in your HTML file, you used to have to say, yes, this is JavaScript, and now they don't even check. You don't even need to tell the browser that it's JavaScript that's being loaded. It just assumes it is. So everyone uses JavaScript to some degree with websites. So that's why it's really important you learn. Now JavaScript is more of a coding language, and it involves a lot of understanding. HTML and CSS, you can kind of start it straight away. I mean, you can just open a document and write something, or almost, and just add a few things top and bottom, but almost write something and it will just show it, and it won't be an issue at all. But with JavaScript, it's a bit more difficult. It's a computer language, so there is a lot larger learning curve, but it's actually written really nicely, and there's things out there. There's what we call libraries, which are kind of add-ons to it. The biggest one being jQuery, which just actually makes things so much easier. And JavaScript's quite an old language, but a lot of the libraries just try and update it and make it a lot nicer for you now. Part of the issue with all of this stuff, especially CSS and JavaScript, is that every browser operates them slightly different. And actually, there's a lot of things in JavaScript and CSS that the browsers just refuse. Like, I'm not doing that one. And you don't know necessarily which browser's doing which unless you're being very careful and check websites, for compatibility and check the documents. Anyway, tangent over. So you think, okay, so we've got the content, we've got the presentation, and we've got the interactivity. Surely that's it. Well, the fourth thing is called PHP. Now, originally it was personal homepage, and then they changed it from there, but that's not interesting. What is interesting was what it does. Everything we've done so far has been done by your browser at home. So if I make a website now, and you go to my website, I just basically send you the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and your browser works it all out and configures it and blah blah blah. And that's really good, and that's really helpful because my server is expensive as heck, right? So I don't want to be doing stuff on my server. I'd rather you did it on your computer, and you don't have to pay anything, apart from a bit of electricity to load stuff and to do all that stuff on your computer. But servers actually cost a fortune, so I don't want to be doing it on mine. However, there are things that actually I do want to be doing on my side, on the server side. So one quick example would be credit card processing. So it's great, I could do the form for you to fill out, all with HTML and CSS, nice little form there. When you click submit, I want it to be done my side. I don't want it to be done your side anymore because you've sent me the information. So I need to process it my side, and then contact the bank, check you've got the funds. If you've got the funds, then come back to you. Okay, so there are a lot of stuff, a huge amount of stuff that needs to be done my side. And that's what we use PHP for. PHP does not escape the server. The client will never know PHP exists. PHP is purely done on the server side. And so what a lot of websites are written in, they're not written in HTML, they're written in PHP. So it's a .php file. But with PHP, you can actually just close off PHP within the file itself and go right, just go with HTML and just write HTML, and it's absolutely fine with that. So the documents are actually PHP files. If you intend to use PHP, you have to make them PHP files. But you can actually just not write any PHP on it, and it will still render as HTML. So what the server does is it goes through the document and it makes all the changes that need to be done on the server side. So for instance, that text we showed earlier, that could have been done with PHP. Okay, so I could have written a piece of PHP code to display that text, and then when the server's gone through the document and processed it all, it then grabs it and sends it to you. And all you get is the HTML, the CSS, and any JavaScript. That's all you get. You don't get any of the PHP, so it's all done my side, so I have complete control over it, which is fantastic for security and everything else. But there's also some things that you just can't do on the client side, payment processing being an example. So we've done 4 of them, and you think, okay, surely that's everything. All right, we've done the client side, client's all happy, and that's all that I'm going to talk about with the client side. That's what a lot of, or most of the majority of websites use those 3. We've talked about the client side, so I've got an operation there. But when I process the credit card, when I process it, where does that go? Well, do I write a text document and save it onto my server with your credit card details, for my reference, and then, do I email them to the bank or whatever? Well, no, I could bounce it straight away to the bank, for instance, but a lot of places want to store your username and your details so that you can log in after you've paid, or that I know where to send the download link to, or whatever it is. So I need that information. The worst thing I could do is, and you can do this, is to make text files on the server. And the reason being is my server could be hacked, okay? And text files are very, very easy to hack. And can you imagine if the website takes off and you have millions and millions of people, millions and millions of text files, and if you want to search for someone's name, you have to open every single one of them. It's not practical. This is where databases come in, and I think probably you know something about a database, but maybe you don't. The easiest analogy to what a database is it's like an Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so Excel spreadsheet, and it's just a list of, you have the columns up there, and then you have a list of like all of the users on your site or whatever. Then you have those tabs at the bottom of Excel, and you can have one for users, one for, admins. You have one for your posts, and comments and things like that. So you can have different tables, okay? Now, I would be lynched if you are an experienced person and I've just said that they're like an Excel spreadsheet, because databases are more like Microsoft Access, which very few people probably watching this maybe have used, but maybe have heard of, which is actually a database. Spreadsheets are not databases, but I find it easiest to kind of get you halfway there with that analogy. The thing about a database though, and why it's much better than Microsoft Excel, is you can actually link multiple tables together in any way you want. And for searching, because of the way it's set up, it can search for information really quickly. With the Microsoft Excel setup, it would not be as efficient to search for things. You can set what each entry has to be. So for instance, if usernames, right, I don't want you to write down a username of 500 characters, so I'm going to say it has to be 8. And you can actually set it in the database, it cannot be more than 8 characters. And the reason for that is when you set up a database, like there's a memory allocation, there's the amount of space that it's going to give you for that database, and the smaller you make the bits, the smaller you make the sections that people are going to give to the database, the more you can fit in effectively. We hope you found that useful. If you do find it useful, then please click like, and if you've got anything to say at all, please write a comment. If you want to see more from us, we release videos every single day from now on at 6 o'clock, so 6 o'clock UK time. In the PM. If you want to make sure that you keep up to date with all our videos, then please click subscribe and that bell thing as well. And as I said before, if you've got any comments or any questions, please put them in the comments, because in future videos I'd love to do a video that answers all your comments in a proper way rather than just a kind of quick response. So I hope you enjoyed that video. Thank you very much.